Welcome to Four Together webinar series brought to you by the School of Management. The series is designed to bring interesting topics and people to our global community of students, alumni, and leaders in business and government to empower, educate, and inspire. Each webinar, we will bring in experts from industry with the purpose to spark thought, connect people, and stimulate engaging discussions. To begin today's session will be Gerhard Affeltaler, Dean of the School of Management.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope first and foremost that all of you are safe and healthy and staying positive and productive. These are certainly unique times that require flexibility and adaptation from all of us, but we want you to know that we are here for you from the School of Management, and we are here for you also with a terrific session today that our Associate Dean for Undergraduate Studies, Professor Veronica Guerrero, has put together for you. And with that, I turn it over to you, Veronica.
Thank you, Gerhard, and welcome everybody. We hope to have a great discussion today about career entry in these uncertain times, and we have a wonderful set of panelists that have joined us today. Before we move forward with those introductions, I want you to know that we really want this to be an interactive session and that you could please submit any questions you may have using the Q&A function. You should see that at the bottom of your screen. And if you submit your questions there, we will receive them and forward them on to our moderator, who will present them to our panelists today. So with that, let's get started. And I'd like to now introduce our Associate Dean for the graduate programs in the School of Management, Dr. Vlad Vyman, who is a talent management expert. And we are really happy to have him moderate the session today. Vlad?
Hello, good afternoon. As we all adjust to this new online reality, managing to find a job in today's market during this pandemic could be difficult. And in the midst of the uncertainty, it is normal to wonder if you should put your job search on hold or just keep looking. Hopefully you've been able to learn about our panelists through the bios that we provided in the promotional materials for this session. You've seen that they each have a deep and valuable expertise, and we're very grateful for their time today. Each of our panelists will spend a few minutes giving their personal assessment and observations of the job market landscape today during this global crisis. We will then open the session to questions from all attendees, which we will pose to our esteemed panelists. So with that in mind, let me first introduce Betsy Berkhemer-Credaire to start our panelist session. Betsy is the CEO of Berkhemer-Clayton and the CEO of 2020 Women on Boards. Berkhemer-Clayton, Inc. is a retained executive search firm based in Los Angeles, specializing in senior level and board searches for corporations, universities, and nonprofit organizations. So welcome, Betsy.
Well, thank you, Vlad, and good afternoon, everybody. Gee, I wish we could see everybody's faces. Sorry that we cannot, but hopefully you can see ours, and we will connect with brilliant strategies for you. It's always a challenge to be working from home. Welcome to my home office, which I don't work from generally. My whole company is working from their homes because our offices, which is very expensive real estate in downtown Los Angeles, are sitting empty. I'm even paying the parking while we're home for who knows, a couple of months. But it's a very it's a wild experience, and it's very difficult. I have 10 employees. I have 5 employees in our search firm at Berkhemer-Clayton and 5 employees at 2020 Women on Boards, which is a campaign. It's a global campaign, but focused in the U.S. To advance more women, senior level women, to positions on corporate boards of directors. And hope to talk to you about that another time. But a retained executive search firm generally handles senior level positions, management and C-suite, which means reporting to the chief executive officer of corporations or presidents of universities. And I've been in this business for 26 years. I've enjoyed it very much, and I've survived as an entrepreneur. I've survived 4 recessions, including 2008. I expect we're going to be walking into a recession right now, but I'm optimistic that we will get through it, and you will get through it, and you will be able to find your career, and maybe not your dream career right out of business school, but you'll be able to work your magic and find a pathway. So you probably won't be getting to know retained executive search firms until you are about 20 years advanced in your careers, but it is good to be on this panel and let you know what the progression of roles might be. And then someday, women as well as men in the audience, I'd like you to be thinking that your ultimate career goal is to serve on public company boards of directors, which is a great deal of fun. And it's also a way that you can make money later in your career that most people don't even know about until they're about their 30s or 40s. So you're getting advance warning that this is where you should be dedicating your career. And along the way, I'd like to advise that you are getting on nonprofit boards or political commissions, other ways to develop your visibility and your being known in your industries and in your career. So we'll come back to more stories in just a minute, but delighted to be here. Thank you, Vlad.
Thank you, Betsy. Next, we have Becky Bruno, who is the president of Bruno Recruiting Group. Becky is a trusted and respected executive recruiter in the San Francisco Bay Area, who feels truly passionate about helping unite top talent with leading companies. She has 20 years of experience in the equity compensation, financial services, and recruiting industries. Welcome to Becky.
Thank you, Vlad, and thank you everybody for inviting me today. First of all, I would like to say congratulations to you all on your upcoming graduation and your accomplishments. It is fabulous, and I am thrilled for you. I know that this is an exciting time. It's also a very uncertain time. But with that being said, I think that there is a great deal that you can do now to prepare for your career and prepare for what lies ahead. In terms of what I do with my business, to add on to what Vlad said, I focus on direct hire or permanent job opportunities. I also do temporary placements through my business. I have several recruiters that work with me, and we do primarily focus in finance and accounting, financial services. We do some roles in benefits and HR as well. Over the years, I've worked on just about every different job that there is out there. One thing that I thought would be interesting for you to know up front about recruiting firms is that we're here to help you. And I work with candidates from entry level all the way up to senior management level. I don't do the executive search, more along the lines of what Betsy does, but I work up until that point. And one of the questions that I often get from recent college graduates is they want to know how this works and if there's a fee involved or anything along those lines, because I think back when their parents were doing this, you would always go and pay a recruiter or a search firm. And so the answer to that is no. We are here to help you. And when we get to the Q&A, I think we'll talk a little bit more about some tips and whatnot, but I would certainly encourage you during this time to look for recruiting firms that focus in areas where your focus is and to reach out and make those connections. So very quickly, in terms of what I'm seeing right now, up until about a month ago, we at Bruno Recruiting had a very large pipeline of great jobs that we were recruiting for. I'm excited to say that we're still recruiting for many of those. However, I would say the majority have gone on hold for now. I think many clients have been trying to figure out, how do we work remotely? How do we set this up? How do we get our current employees taken care of before we work on bringing in new employees? But many jobs are still open. Unlike a typical recession, not every sector is impacted, and even in a typical recession, not every sector is impacted. So we'll talk some, I think, when we get into Q&A more about that as well. But hopefully that gives a little bit more of an overview. The last thing that I wanted to leave you with in my opening was that while times are uncertain, I think with crisis comes great opportunity. And oftentimes going through a difficult period and a difficult time like this makes one more resilient over the long haul. And I think that patience is going to be your best friend, patience and a positive attitude throughout this time. So with that said, Vlad, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Becky. Next up is Nate Corte, who is a double Lutheran alum. He has a business administration undergraduate degree in 2010, and he's earned his MBA in 2017. He's held a variety of roles in finance and operations throughout his career, with a focus on business performance, strategic planning, and project and change management. Currently, he is the Director of Strategic Planning and Operations for Amgen's Global Engineering Organization. Nate?
Great, thank you, Vlad, and thank you to all the School of Management. First, I'd like to start off and echo some of the sentiments of others and say that I've been in your guys' position. So students that are looking to graduate, I finished my undergrad in 2010. The fall before, we actually were experiencing about 10% unemployment. If you look at where we're at today, prior to the COVID impact and everything coming to a pause, we were seeing about 3% unemployment. Unemployment claims are up to about 22 million over the last few weeks, and we're seeing about 8% unemployment right now. We do expect that to grow a bit more. Maybe we'll see as upwards of 30 million in unemployment and maybe greater than 10%. But what I do want to say is that I was in your position 10 years ago and coming out of school with a lot of uncertainty about what does the job market look like? Where are we going to be able to go from here? And I do want to encourage all of you to stay positive, stay optimistic. Becky made a great comment. It was something I was going to echo, is that in different crises, there are always opportunities, and there's opportunities for companies to strengthen their position. And to give examples of that, where some of those opportunities exist, while hospitality is down today, travel is down, and other areas, things have essentially come to a pause. We've also seen things increase in areas such as healthcare is up. We've seen Amazon is up. They're hiring 100,000 positions. There's a lot of innovative services out there, like Instacart, as an example, that's growing in demand. And so I'd encourage you to be innovative in these times. We have to think about how can we collaborate with people, work with people differently, because what I would say is that, in my opinion, this is definitely a pause. This is very different than the 2008 financial crisis, where we had a melting down of a sector, where we had some fundamental flaws in the way that we were managing our financials and our debt and risk and credit default swaps. What this is really people need to pause. They need to stay home. They need to avoid spread, but we do have a lot of people that in this unemployment have been furloughed, and those businesses expect to continue. We've seen unprecedented economic bailouts of 2.3 trillion. I believe we're seeing also another 2.5 trillion that are going to go out to businesses to continue to stimulate the economy. And the hope is that we can start to restart slowly and come back safely to jobs, and that will begin to resume activity. It'll take a while, could take several years, could take a decade to resume back to a 3% unemployment rate, but I am hopeful and optimistic that we'll continue to progress towards that slowly, and that we'll start to recover from this, because there is a workforce that's ready to go and ready to go back, and hopefully we'll start to see those activities slowly ramp up. With that, I'll go ahead and pause and wait for the Q&A session to get into some of the tips that I have for students. I've been in your position. I've mentored and hired and had several interns from CLU and other schools. So I have a lot of tips would love to share, and I'm sure the other panelists, but we'll pause for now and let others speak. Thanks.
Thank you, Nate. Finally, we have Monica Tobin, who is the Associate Director of the Executive Search Team at Century Group in the Westlake Village office. Monica has an extensive recruiting experience helping accounting and finance professionals achieve their career. Prior to Century Group, she spent 15 years with a national staffing firm, facilitating both temporary and permanent placement services for her clients. Monica, you're on.
Hi, thanks, Vlad, and thanks everybody for joining us today. And I think it bears saying that the simple fact that you're joining a webinar like this today really shows how proactive you're already being in setting up your career today. And I think that you should all be, congratulated on that effort, because it really is going to take flexibility and adaptability and creativity to get through these next few months, really. And like a lot of my fellow panelists, I've been through a few recessions now, but of course 2008 comes to mind instantaneously. And what I can tell you is, and I'll acknowledge that the current situation we're in is pretty unprecedented. You know, a lot of economists think this is a combination of a financial crisis, a wartime crisis, even bits of a natural disaster crisis. And so if you're feeling alone, and if you're feeling that this is, you don't know how to navigate this, you're not alone. This is unprecedented. But what I can tell you, and the good news is that just as many economists feel that there's really going to be a sharp V effect, meaning a sharp decline. And we're really feeling that right now. And across all sectors, it's not really being discriminating. The sectors are all being hit very quickly right now. But on the flip side, there is a feeling that there will be a strong incline once we get back to our new normal, so to speak. And so know that those skills that you're obtaining right now, any kind of remote working skills, any kind of resilient skills, they're going to serve you well later on, much to Becky's point. And so, know that this is going to be temporary, the sharpness of this for now on. The uncertainty is the scariest part, absolutely. And it's largely based on the decline of those transmission rates. But, to Nate's point, if we all stay home and really put priority on our health, we can help get the economy back on running the more that we listen to those guidelines. And so we can get into Q&A later, and I've got tips as well for how to field sort of your entry-level job search. If you want to get into finance and accounting particularly, which is my area of expertise in the Los Angeles and Ventura and Orange County areas, how to look for jobs that are tangentially related to that, how to apply online, how to remote interview very effectively, and how to follow up with hiring managers if you're not hearing anything about your job search, because there's great ways and tactful ways to have those approaches. So I'll throw it back to you, Vlad.
Thank you very much, Monica, and thank you all for that valuable insight. Now we'll move into the Q&A portion of the session. Again, we invite all attendees to submit your questions using the Q&A function that you can see down below. We will collect and present those questions to the panelists. While you are thinking and submitting your questions, let's start with a few questions that we have already received prior to this session. So the first question, I need to read it, of course. The first question reads as follows. I'm worried that I will end up having to take any job I can just to survive, which will hurt my resume and career trajectory. As an entry-level employee, what should you be doing to avoid getting ourselves into job situations that could harm our career growth in the future? So, Monica, you just actually mentioned that, and you said that you have a few tips. Maybe we'll start with you then.
Sure. I think that there's a lot of big steps you can take day to day to ensure that you're in a mindset of finding that right job. So right now, It's really about approaching each day like job hunting is your job, setting up a schedule each day, trying to keep a sleep and wake schedule, dressing, maybe casually, but dressing for each day, taking breaks, and really leveraging your time job hunting to find legitimate jobs. And what I look at when I tell people coming out of finance and accounting degrees is, you might have a focus on an industry, but what we know from data, decades and decades in the making, is that there are a lot of long-term growth trajectories for a few industries that aren't going to go away because of COVID. Industries like manufacturing, technology, healthcare, agriculture, these are all long-term growth industries. And so if you have the ability to gain an entry-level job in anything from data entry to data analysis, using administrative skills you've gained through internships, those industries are going to be shored up even through this crisis. And they might not be the sexy industries like, entertainment or media, but they certainly will provide a long-term stability that you will look for in the future. And then one thing I want to talk to you about in terms of work from home options, which we're seeing a lot of right now online, is that beware of something that's too good to be true. I just had a candidate tell me that he had an interview on a chat room for a work from home option or job that was $50 an hour. And, he didn't know the name of the company, and the recruiter or the interviewer was operating in a chat room only, and there was only texting. Some people are taking advantage of work from home right now. And so just make sure that whatever you're applying to online, you have as much information as you can, because you're wondering if taking a job that's not the right industry or entry level is going to hurt your resume. What'll hurt you in the long run is taking something that's not legitimate. And so I think try and be flexible in terms of the industries you're exploring. Try and be flexible in terms of taking it more administrative work that might really shore up your online skills, but beware of some of these scams that are going on.
Thank you, Monica. And I apologize. Actually, I was going to ask you another question, different one, but we'll come back to that later. But thank you very much for this answer. Betsy, would you like to address that as well? Oh, you need to unmute yourself. I'm sorry.
Sorry, thank you. I wanted to add, since I do focus on the more senior level career moves, we do look at everybody's resume from the beginning. You can't just simply say, if you've had a 20-year career, you just lop off the first 5 years of your resume. No, you need to include at least any long-term role that you take from the beginning of your career right out of college. I said, but don't worry, because we look at a variety of early experiences as building exposure, as not as a negative. But if one particular role doesn't work, don't worry, that's not going to ruin your resume for life. You're just simply experimenting in the first 5 years, really, you can't know where you're going to end up. You can't even know at this point what you're really going to like to do. So we understand when we look back at your early career that it's a time of learning, experimentation, and hopefully everywhere you will be working, you will gain experience that's going to help you build your career from there.
That's encouraging. Thank you, Betsy.
You might want to, but no.
Yes, of course. Now, there's another question, actually two questions that sound quite similar. I'm reading here, and then I'm going to the Q&A and the chat just to observe questions. So Betsy, I would start with you and then jump to Becky to answer those two questions. How do you, so the first question, they are kind of related. How do you reach out to companies that you have applied to see if they're still looking into the position? And the first question, the second one, should we continue to apply for jobs during this time if you're not hearing back from employers? So Betsy, we'll start with you and then jump to Becky.
Well, really briefly on my part, I would say cast a wide net, keep looking at any opportunity you can, and don't worry and don't wait for some employer to get back to you. Keep following up gently as you might be able to do with the talent management people who are running searches or have job openings. But be understanding that they also are being hit by probably hundreds of resumes for any one position. So it takes a while to get through them. They do get through them. They may miss you. So keep on looking at every other possibility that you can reach out to, and don't get your heart set on something at all, because it may not work out.
Understood. Thank you. Becky, go ahead.
Thank you, Vlad. So I have a few things actually that I'd like to add on to this. And one is kind of tagging on to what Monica said about make it your job to find a job. One thing that I recommend to people that are actively looking for a job is to get a notebook and to mark down where you've applied, what the position was. It's probably advisable, if you can, to even print out the job description. Sometimes those might disappear from line, or they might make tweaks to it. I think it's important, and I think it's helpful to keep a record of your progress. If you do reach out to a company to check on your status, which I absolutely think that you should, I think it's important to keep track of that. You could mark the date and the name and the title of the person that you reached out to. And as Betsy said, they're probably going to be inundated with inquiries, and it most likely now it will be an email, because unless you have a cell phone, you know, you're not going to catch them at their office. I think that the strongest emails are going to show interest, but it's also going to have a standout feature, and that standout feature will reiterate the value that you can bring to them. Oftentimes, I talk to candidates about their thank you notes following an interview, and a lot of times they'll send them to me and I'll take a look at them. I often get the thank you note that is, this is the perfect job for me. This is what I want. This is the great next step for my career. But really, what a company wants to know is, yeah, they do want to know you're obviously excited about it, but they also want to know the value that you can bring to them. And you might say, well, gosh, how do I know that if I'm just graduating from school? But I think that you can tie into things that you've done in your coursework, or on committees or clubs or activities or interns or summer jobs, and they're transferable skills. The other thing that I would say about looking for jobs and printing them out is that you can take a highlighter and you can go through those different job descriptions, and you can match what words and requirements in the job description that help match your skills. And that you could also take those skills and you could start looking at other jobs out there, and it might be in an industry that you haven't thought of, and you can find things that are transferable. And I think that might help broaden your scope, which is something that you may very want to do, to touch on to what Monica said.
Thank you, Becky. You know, there's so many questions, to be honest with you right now. They keep piling up. I want to answer as many as possible, so just try to be a little bit more concise in our answers. Monica, Nate, by the way, I haven't forgotten about you. Just hang on, because the next question will be for you specifically, actually, by name. Somebody ask for you by name. Monica, would you like to also comment on this? And there was another question related to that. I'll find it. Okay, go ahead. Respond to this one if you want.
To the previous question, I'm sorry?
Yes, and yeah, please.
I just have one more thing to add. LinkedIn is your best friend right now. And so when you are applying for jobs, and to whatever extent there is identifying information on the person who is getting your resume or a hiring manager, send them a LinkedIn invite. And in that invite, make it personal. Say, I just applied to the X job online. I'd love to be considered for an interview. Please see my LinkedIn profile for a little bit more information on me. Because people, the first thing they do when you apply and they get your resume is Google you. Have a clean Facebook page, have a clean Instagram page, have a fantastic LinkedIn profile. Use this time right now to really kind of hone your LinkedIn and make it very accessible and descriptive for people so that they can get a sense of you outside of your resume. And always have your LinkedIn address at the top of your resume. Always, always, always. So I think sending those invites grows your LinkedIn network. It gives you a little bit more of an edge when you're applying to a job, because I don't know a lot of people who do that when they apply to jobs. And it gives you a reason to follow up with those individuals as well. So that's one of my tidbits for networking, because right now, people who network and have a large network are getting the jobs.
Excellent. And that actually answers a few other questions, because people were asking about LinkedIn and networking opportunities also. Question specifically for Nate. I promise that I have not forgotten you. So here it goes. Yeah. As an undergraduate business student graduating this May, my original plan was to join the financial services industry to gain professional work experience before doing a master's program in finance or economics. Now I'm debating starting a master's program this fall, as jobs in the financial services industry are getting more and more difficult to find. What are your thoughts on this trade-off, Nate?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think this is a question that undergraduate students ask even in a healthy economy of when should I go back and pursue a master's degree? A couple thoughts on that. And so there's, as far as tips goes, there was 3 things I was really going to highlight today, and it was agility, being agile, being able to change, being proactive. We've covered that. I was going to talk about networking. Monica, I think you nailed it. Networking is so important. And the third one was differentiation. And when you think about how do I differentiate myself from other candidates or my peers when I'm seeking a job opportunity, there's many ways to do that. Obviously, your work experience. What have I actually accomplished to date, and how is what I've accomplished applicable to the role that I'm going to? We talked about that value proposition. There's demonstrated success. Now, as undergraduate students coming out of school, it's tougher to show, hey, I've done this. And so you'll have to look to draw experiences from things. Maybe you've been a part of a club. Maybe you've participated in sports and you organized events, or you were leading a team. There's volunteer opportunities, maybe there's internships, or you could go and pursue other degrees or certificates. And so my opinion on this is that master's degree are very beneficial. I have them. I also have certifications in project management as well as in Six Sigma. And if you're somebody who's pursuing an accounting degree or a finance degree, a master's with a CPA will help you long-term in your career. One of the things to look at there is that, in my personal opinion, I waited a few years to start my master's, because when I came out of school, I thought I'd be an accountant, and I went to work in an accounting firm. I started as an intern there, got hired on doing accounts receivable, and worked for a while before I transitioned more into analytics and financial analysis, planning, strategy, and realized, hey, what I really like doing is taking data and using data to drive the business, to drive decision making, to drive action. So if I'd gone right away and did an MS in accountancy, it probably wouldn't have hurt me. There wouldn't have been anything wrong with that. It would have, but I knew I wanted to do something different. And by having some work experience, it helped me drive towards what I wanted to do. I'd also say that having that work experience, when you go into a master's, you're going to look at the practical application of the theory that you're learning in your courses, and having some work experience will help you. Now, but I would say that would be more the argument for why to wait. An argument for why not to wait would be to, if you could get into, let's say you go focus on your GMAT this summer, you keep applying for jobs, and if nothing's landing, what you could do is really focus on a high GMAT, get into a competitive, 1-year MBA program, or 2-year MBA program, or whatever master's you're pursuing. And one of those things I would say is, if you get into these programs, they're feeders. So I go and speak at universities all across Southern California. I bring students from Cal Lu, UCLA, USC, and they come in and they do internships. And when these grad students come in the summer, and same with undergrads, if they perform strongly, those lead to career opportunities. And so there is an argument there as well. And what I'd say is, if you were able to somehow couple work experience with that master's degree, or even just the master's degree, it's about that networking piece again, the people you're going to meet in school. One of the jobs that I had at Amgen, I was already working there. I met a boss in a class, my first class in my MBA program. She hired me into a promotion, and that led me into an awesome new career at Amgen, and it's gone well from there. And so what I'd say is I'm a big advocate of additional learning, whether that's degrees or certifications. Continue to learn, continue to grow, continue to network, and look for those opportunities. And so with that, I'll pause and give others an opportunity to speak on that.
Betsy, would you like to add something to that?
Thanks. I would like to add and applaud all of the comments and tips that everybody's giving. Very, very helpful. On networking, sounds like a big fuzzy word. How do you network? You can't, and us in this environment, we can't go to cocktail parties. You can't meet people. So timing is kind of interesting and probably helpful because you could network to develop personal relationships is what networking is about. Building relationships with people, like Nate said, who see you in action. So the way that you can be seen in action by people who might eventually hire you for a real job is to volunteer at a nonprofit organization and become known through that. You get to know the board of directors or the staff of a nonprofit. It could be in this environment, maybe the Red Cross or United Way or other nonprofit organizations. March of Dimes is where I really made a lot of connections in my early career. And even though you're working from home, volunteering from home, those organizations need volunteers, maybe on the phone doing a phone bank, raising money, maybe doing other kinds of outreach to other volunteers. But you can call up those organizations and say that you're a volunteer, you'd like to volunteer for free. You're not looking for, obviously you'd love to be paid. Nonprofits don't pay very well. And yet you are really being paid by the contacts that you will make. And another good thing happening this season is that I've made a lot of connections through political involvement and a lot of friends, and that you don't have to be a big donor to participate in local political elections. This is a big season coming up. You might get lost if you're in one of the presidential campaigns. But there are Senate campaigns, there are local Congress campaigns, state assembly and state senator coming up. You can get involved, and they need help on phone banks, etc. Your purpose is to make connections with the other people who are involved. And they're usually people who have money, and they're certainly people who could hire you. So good for building relationships. You're not going to be able to meet people at cocktail parties in this day and age.
Thank you, Betsy. I like that, even without seeing the questions, you kind of all hitting on multiple questions because, they're somewhat related too. Becky, sorry, a question for you. What type of corporate jobs are considered more essential? Put another way, are there certain areas of the business that we should be looking at for job opportunities?
So, with the companies that I work with, I would say that my most booming clients right now are my biotech clients. A few of those have been in the news because they've been making some positive efforts with the COVID virus. And I have a number of finance jobs open in those. My technology clients, some have slowed down some, others have not. There is hiring going on in logistics, in the food sector, with online retailers, with companies that provide services and products like even Zoom, what we're on today. I would say that those are some of the key areas that I've been seeing. In terms of the actual job function, I think it's varying across, across the companies. But I think that, when you look at it, event planning is not going to be an essential job right now, but payroll is. So I think if you think about what types of jobs does a company absolutely need to have, I would hone in on that some. Well, the other thing that I've been noticing with my clients is that the ones that are filling a position because somebody left still seem to be hiring. The ones that were just adding to their team, those are the ones that have slowed down a bit more. And I realize that that's something that would be hard for you to identify, but if you do start an interview process with somebody, you certainly could ask them why it's open, and it might give you a little bit of a sense as to is it a warmer opportunity than others. So hopefully that helps. The one other thing that I would say on this is temporary jobs. Temporary jobs usually stay somewhat in demand, and we're seeing that, and we're seeing a need for you know, longer term. I'd say some maybe 3 months, some a year. I've had some temps going for 1.5 years or 2 years, and so that is also a possibility as well if you're open to working as a temporary employee instead of a permanent employee.
All right, excellent advice, I thought. Thank you very much, Becky. Monica, question for you. Now more than ever, it seems that your resume is essential in standing out and making a strong positive impression, since we likely will not be interviewing in person anytime soon. Would it be beneficial to have a stylized resume? I'm a marketing communications student looking to be hired for a graphic design or print production position.
I will preface this by saying that I don't work in the marketing and communications or PR industry, but I do know that my colleagues within the graphic design and marketing communications sector absolutely want a stylized resume, a portfolio of your previous work, and some kind of online access to what that work is. So I think that without making it ostentatious, because you don't need something that is radically colorful. You don't need something that is extremely animated. In your industry, it is helpful and it's very valued to show your individuality through your resume. But the content is most important, no doubt. So to Becky's point earlier, when you are applying to jobs, it is essential that you find the keywords in the job description that match your background and make sure your resume reflects that. Because in this day and age with artificial intelligence, job boards, weeding through resumes, filtering out with regard to keywords, you wanna make sure your resume is even being seen. So in the marketing communications industry, absolutely, I would say not only a resume should be customized, but have a portfolio ready, have it a website accessible via your LinkedIn profile, make sure all of your online presence is clean and shows what your talent is.
Could I add?
Oh, yes, go ahead, of course.
Okay, those are excellent points, Monica, and I would add that I mentioned being a volunteer for nonprofits. If you are just out of school and you don't have a portfolio of work, then you can develop that by volunteering for nonprofits, offer to do their newsletter, their direct mail marketing pieces, their email marketing. And for those of you who are interested in social media, obviously you do it on a personal level, but what companies are looking for are strategic social media campaigns and strategies. How do you help build a company's reputation through social media? If you can also hit on those highlights, especially marketing and communications. And for you finance people, definitely nonprofits need finance help. So you can find volunteer opportunities there. And again, for the purpose of meeting people, but you're also building your experience portfolio.
Thank you, Betsy. Nate, a couple of questions for you that are somewhat related. Hello, I've been working in logistics for 8 years. I have recently been promoted to project manager. Do you have any tips on salary negotiations? That's number one. And the second one, somewhat similar, but not exactly the same. I'm a master's student with years of work experience. How can I leverage my postgraduate degree during this time of economic recovery? I think we're not in the recovery yet, but you understand the question.
Yes. Yeah, so I'll take the salary one first. So, so what I would say is there's a lot of great data out there. So you've got depending on the sector that you're in, if you're in finance or the IT sector, you have organizations like Robert Half who do studies of salaries. They reference the Labor Bureau of Statistics. And so you can also go to websites like Glassdoor, and you could look at what are market rates, what are in the area. You can look at your experience, and you can look at what is my market rate. Most employers are going to, if you're being promoted, I would say if this is a promotion, this is a step up in responsibility, you're going to probably be on that lower to middle area of that pay scale. And if you're somebody who's been in a position for some time, you're very well qualified, you're a top performer, you should expect to be in that middle to upper end of that range. And it's a communication. So one thing I've learned in my career is being very proactive. You certainly don't want to harass your management about pay, but when it's appropriate, when you're talking about performance, when you're talking about a promotion and there's an offer going on, is to have that conversation, but also have it from a place of data reference, right? You can reference the market, what's available when you're looking at salary. The second question was about how do I use my master's? So what I would say is so when you're looking at the market now, you mentioned 8 years of logistics experience, you mentioned a master's. So in a booming economy, I always encourage people to take on a role that's something of interest or something that's a challenge. When you're just starting out, that could be a variety of things. You can take a job just to get some experience, learn what you don't like or what you do like. Putting more tools in your toolbox would be a saying that I've heard many times in collecting experiences. Now, for somebody, 8 years of experience, a master's, and if you're concerned about the job economy, one advantage you have over somebody without work experience is you could actually go and apply, and it's not something I would say highly recommend, but I did this. I wanted to get into Amgen. For those of you who don't know, it's a Fortune 500 biotech company. It's born and raised in Ventura County. I went to Cal Lu twice. I tried to get into Amgen. I applied for jobs for a little while. What I ended up doing was I applied for a job that was lower than my qualifications. So I went in as a contract worker, which Becky talked about, and I took a position that was an entry-level position requiring 0 to 2 years experience. I had 3.5. So I finally got in. And then I've been here 7 years now, and I've gone from an entry-level position to director, which is about 5 promotions. And it was just like, hey, I just want to get in somewhere, and then I'm going to prove that I can go higher from there. And so if you've got, I wouldn't say apply for something that you're extremely overqualified with and you're going to be bored with, but if there's a company you're trying to get into or a type of role you're trying to get into and you're not having traction or success because maybe you're at the bottom end of the qualifications, maybe take a look down at the role that comes before that or types of roles that come before that and go and apply into a company where you believe you could go in and maybe within a year or 2 years, you prove that you can get up to that, and that'll differentiate you, right? We were talking about this before, differentiation. So if I am the least qualified candidate, I'm not standing out. So how do I stand out? You could stand out as being as one of the more qualified candidates, or some of the things that our other panelists have talked about. Volunteer experience. I volunteer for a local 503c. I've done project management for them, software integration. I help them with their bids, and so these are things that it's just experiences. And through these experiences, you learn things and you can apply those experiences, and they help you to stand out. And so to directly answer that question, I would say, apply for the jobs you think you're best qualified for, something that's going to challenge you and interest you. And if you're really not getting traction, look at maybe applying a little bit lower at the job before the one you want to get into and work your way into it.
Thank you, Nate. Just wanted to switch gears and ask a couple of questions of Monica and Becky. I thought we have addressed this issue previously, but questions keep coming. I'm a marketing major. Due to COVID, industry has been hit. How do I find a good job in an industry that has been hit by the pandemic? And again, should I start or should I continue to look for jobs or wait until this is over? All questions related to COVID pandemic and job hunt. how would you address those questions? Either one, start with Monica or Becky. Okay, let's start with Becky.
You probably saw my finger unmuting me.
Yes, indeed.
To jump in on this one. So I think absolutely the best thing that you can do right now is preparation. Monica talked earlier about LinkedIn, and LinkedIn truly will be your best friend. And if you're not familiar with it yet, I would familiarize yourself. My guess is that LinkedIn probably has articles and maybe even some webinars on how to get started. I will tell you that I guess I could speculate why, but candidates that have a professional photo on LinkedIn tend to get more traction than ones that don't. On LinkedIn, there are many tools that you can use. There is a feature where you can add a suitcase icon. I think that I think there are variations where there's a small monthly fee that can indicate that you're looking for a job. But one of the things that I wanted to touch on LinkedIn that you may not know about is that there are a ton of different groups on LinkedIn. There is a group there are a gazillion groups for every different industry out there. There are groups for every different function out there. And you can join these groups. Some require approval from the administrator of the group, others don't. But as a recruiter, what I've found over the years is that many times I'll join a group, or if I have a really specific search in a very niche area. Years ago, I had to hire a soybean analyst for a company. I had never done that in my life. I didn't even know what they did. Well, I went onto LinkedIn and I found a group that kind of dealt in agricultural analysts. And people will post things in there. Many times people will post jobs in there. And so I think that that could be a great way of networking. So I think this time you could use it for preparation. You could use it for networking. You certainly should be applying to opportunities if you see them. If your job search goes on for a while and you haven't found a job, I think that that's fine. I think that companies and hiring managers will be understanding, but I think that without hesitation, a question that you will be asked is, what have you been doing over the last 6 months? And really, a lot of times what a hiring manager is looking for is they're looking to see how one has spent their time. They're not necessarily picking on you because you haven't found a job, but they're looking to see if you've spent your time wisely. And I think that could tie into volunteering. It could tie into maybe you start a virtual group in your neighborhood to help seniors in one way or another. Maybe even you've picked up a new hobby, but people will want to know what you're doing. And I don't know that there's necessarily a right or wrong answer, as long as you have an articulate answer and as long as it's something that you have some passion about in terms of explaining. So I don't know, Monica, if you want to add, you probably want to add some on to that. So I'll go ahead and mute for now.
I think you answered it really beautifully. Nobody can tell you whether you have to take a job or not right now. If you have to take a job because you need to pay your student loans, because you need to pay your bills, get yourself a job. If you feel like you need that I'll preface that by saying, if you need to pay bills and student loans, that you might graduate with, absolutely take a job right now. You're in an entry-level position. And what that means, much to Betsy's point, is you have a long career ahead of you. And you might have goals of getting into marketing or advertising or communications right now. Those goals might change depending on what kind of role you're introduced to. So I want to make 2 points on this. One, you might want to network, quote unquote, on LinkedIn by asking for what we call informational interviews, or what I've been approached to do, which is a lot of virtual coffees. People are craving human interaction right now. If you see on LinkedIn, for instance, or Facebook, that friends of yours or colleagues or schoolmates of yours are connected to certain other people, you can, number one, you can ask for referrals on LinkedIn from those individuals. to the other individuals that they are connected to. You can cold reach out to people on LinkedIn to connect with them. Ask people for informational interviews or virtual coffees. Be bold right now. Constantly, companies tell me that they not only want people with quote unquote hard skills, but they want people who are scrappy, who have ingenuity, who are creative, and who will do everything from soup to nuts, flexible. This is your time on LinkedIn to reach out to people, cold introduce yourself to them, ask them for information, or to sit down for 5 to 10 minutes over Zoom or FaceTime, who are in your industry, and get information on how they entered the job market. You know, we're telling you now, but there's people within those industries you want to join who would be happy to talk to you. Don't be fearful that they're going to throw, brush you off. Maybe some will, but a lot won't right now, because they want to help. They want to, and then people are craving human interaction right now. Informational interviews are fantastic. Mine have tripled in my inbox in the last 3 weeks, and I love taking them because everybody's got a story to share, and that will make you stand out when the time comes that your resume is looked at. That will make you stand out, those types of things. So I think don't be shy. Ask for people's time, ask for their information, make sure you're brief about it, and be bold and try and be scrappy.
Thank you, Monica. We are almost out of time. I would like to ask 2 questions. One goes to Betsy and one to Nate. Betsy, just particularly to you. As a talent management director currently completing the executive MBA program, I presume at Lutheran in our program, how do you recommend making the move towards serving on boards or in senior executive management positions, if that is something that I have a strong interest in?
Yeah, well, building your career gets you up to a senior management position. And like Nate said, I really enjoy what everybody said on the panel. Nate said, be willing to start anywhere. Start at the bottom of a company where you want to work, or maybe a company where you don't want to work. But
sorry, Betsy, yeah. Sorry, interrupt you. Those are executive MBA students who have at least 7, in average 15 years of experience. They're already in senior management role somewhere, or middle management, and they want to move into senior management and maybe a company boards, etc. So
I see.
Not exactly from the bottom.
Not just from the beginning. Well, if I could take a commercial break, this is the second book that I wrote. It's called Winning the Board Game, and it is available on Amazon, and it tells men as well as women how to get on corporate boards. It's all based on your connections and your experience. And as we've talked about in this panel conversation, the connections you make throughout your career are what are going to lead to new jobs, new opportunities, but also to boards. People ask me all the time, because I am an expert on boards, how can I contact a search firm, or how do I see what openings are coming up on boards of directors? Well, no board of directors opening is ever announced publicly. It's all very privately held, very, very inside baseball, if you will, because the board members are looking for people they know, and they are in particular looking for women and people of color and finance background in this day and age, also digital marketing and human resources that they haven't been looking for in the past. But it's still personal connections. So to Monica's point, or from early in your career or mid-career or higher, identifying whom you want to have virtual coffee with, and sharing your resume with those folks who can lead you to possible other introductions is the absolute key to moving forward in your career. My entire career has been based on networking like that. Through nonprofits and politics, etc. And yet I didn't do any business with those organizations. I just built relationships, and so that's how you get on corporate boards. Even your parents, even your cousin, even your uncle who is a banker knows about corporate boards and knows about companies that might be open to meeting a friend of a friend. And so use your contacts and don't be afraid to ask. And don't be afraid to ask all those California Lutheran graduates of the business school, because we can't resist. I mean, I didn't go to Cal Lu, but anytime I get a call from a UCLA grad, that's where I went to school, I'm gonna take the time to talk to that young person or mid-level person, even though they would not be a potential candidate. I'm gonna help. So use your alumni association as much as possible to develop those contacts.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Betsy. Nate, if I may ask you to answer in 1 minute.
Yes.
These two questions, they're very similar. One of them is asking about applying for data analyst position. What kind of things need to be kept in mind or added to the resume? And also student focusing on financial planning. What kind of skills and certifications do you think they should acquire?
Yeah, great. So, and actually, if you're into data analysis, you could do one of these as well. So some certificates require that you have minimum hours of experience. And so, for example, if you wanted to get a PMP, a project management professional certification, yeah, you have to work about 4,000 hours. But there are certifications that don't require work hours. For those of you students who do not qualify, there's like a CAPM, which is another type of certification for project management. If you're specifically going to go into financial analysis and planning where you want to advise people on personal wealth management, I recommend a CFA. You can take, you can go and take a look at the different courses there. There's coursework, there's testing that'd be very beneficial. In terms of looking for what skill sets for a data analyst, be a problem solver. The whole point of analyzing data isn't just to bring it into a spreadsheet and say, hey, here's the information. Take that information and say, what does it mean? Validate it, understand what is the problem statement or the opportunity statement from this data. How do I use this information to build a story? I tell people all the time, they ask me, what do you do at Amgen? I jokingly say I make PowerPoints and tell stories. And so use the data to understand what's significant, what's not significant. How do I use this information to drive the business, to drive decision-making, planning, and be a problem solver. If you can find ways to help people to solve problems, you'll find ways to succeed.
Thank you very much, Nate. And thank you very much to all of our panelists. We have unfortunately run out of time. Let's give them a virtual round of applause, first of all. And now back to Veronica. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Vlad. And again, thank you to the panelists. I need to do one quick plug as everyone's talked about your networks of who you've worked with. Becky, Bruno, and I actually went to Cal Poly together. So I regularly use my network of graduates, alumni that we have networked. We actually worked our first jobs out of college together. And so we still keep in touch professionally as well as personally. So that is the best advice I think that among the plethora of advice that came today is really to leverage those networks. Thank you also to Professor Vyman. Really appreciate navigating today, all the questions. We loved all the questions that came through and the great advice that was presented. Before we go, I just wanted to remind you also that Cal Lutheran has the Career Center. It is still open in a virtual environment currently, so there's lots of ways to still connect and work on your resumes, cover letters, do virtual meetings with them as you prepare for the job market. So that is open to current students and alumni. That is a free service, so please continue to utilize those resources that are here on campus. Additionally, we want to invite you to participate in our 2 upcoming events that were going to be on campus and now have moved into virtual environments. The first one is the Prime competition, where students will showcase their projects that tie to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and then the new Venture Fair, which we all know is pitching new products and ideas. And that is a week-long event that has a 1-day live session. So there's lots of opportunities to participate and attend that event. And with that, I will hand it over to Susan Wood. Thank you.
So we thank you for participating in our first Forward Together webinar. And I'm supposed to go move the slide. We encourage you to join us at our next webinar, Wednesday, April 22nd. We're going to have a new one. So students, please check your email for registration information on the school management event newsletter that was sent. And thanks for joining us as a school management community as we move forward together. So thank you.